Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasuranandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasuranandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasuranandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasuranandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 42nd, chapter 4, 42nd text.
Do you want the light?
No, I'm good. The atrocities of King Kamsa. It's good. Sahi sarva surakyaksho Hi asurad vid kuhasayaha Tanmula devata sarvaha Sesvasra sa chaturmukaha Ayam vaitad vadyopayo Radrishinam vihimsanam Sahi sarva suradyaksho Hi asurad vidguhasayaha Tadmula devataha sarvaha Sesvaraha sachaturmukha Ayam vaitad vadyopayo Yadrishinam vihimsanam Sahi sarva suradyaksho Hi asuradvid guhasayaha Tanmula devataha sarvaha Sesvaraha sachaturmukha Ayam vaitad vadyopayo Yadrishinam vihimsanam Sahi sarva saradyaksho Hi asuradvit kuhasayaha Tanmula devataha savarha Shesvaraha chaturmukaha Ayam vaitad vadyopayo Yadrishinam vihimsanam Hi sarva saradyaksho Hi asuradvid guhasaraha Taduva devatat sarva Chaturmukha Ayam vaitad vadyopayo Hechinam, Sahi sarva suradyaksho Yasuradvid guhasayaha Tadmula devata sarva Seshvaraha sachaturmukha Ayam vatad vadyopayo Yadrishinam vihimsanam Sahi sarva suradyaksho Yasaradvit kuhasayaha Tadmula devata sarvaha Eshvaraha Sachuramukaha Yankayayo Ishinam Bahishanam Mataji's. Saha. He, Lord Vishnu. He, indeed. Sarva Surya Diyakshaha. The leader of all the demigods. He, indeed. Asura Dvit. The enemy of the Asuras. Guha Sayaha. He is the super soul within the core of everyone's heart. Tat Mulaha. Taking shelter at his lotus feet. Devataha. The demigods exist. Sarvaha. All of them. Sa Ishvaraha. Including Lord Shiva. Sa Chatu Mukaha. As well as Lord Brahma, who has 4 faces. Ayam. This is. Vai. Indeed. Tat Vada Upaya. The only means of killing him. Vishnu. Yat. Which? Rishinam. Of great sages, saintly persons, or Vaishnavas. Vihimsanam, suppression with all kinds of persecution. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Lord Vishnu, the super soul within the core of everyone's heart, is the ultimate enemy of the Asuras, and is therefore known as Asuradvit. He is the leader of all the demigods, because all the demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, exist under his protection. The great saintly persons, sages, and Vaishnavas also depend on him. To persecute the Vaishnavas, therefore, is the only way to kill Vishnu. Purport. The demigods and the Vaishnavas actually are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Vishnu, because they're always obedient to his orders. Om Tat Vishnu Paranam Param Sada Prashyanti Suryaha. The demonic followers of Kamsa thought that if the Vaishnavas, saintly persons, and sages were persecuted, the original body of Vishnu would naturally be destroyed. Thus, they decided to suppress Vaishnavism. The Asuras perpetually struggle to persecute the Vaishnavas because they do not want Vaishnavism to spread. Vaishnavas preach only devotional service, not encouraging karmis, jnanis, and yogis. Because if one must liberate oneself from material conditioned life, one must ultimately become a Vaishnava. Our Krishna consciousness movement is directed with this understanding, and therefore the asuras always try to suppress it. Translation: Lord Vishnu, the super soul within the core of everyone's heart, is the ultimate enemy of the asuras and is therefore known as Asuradvit. He's the leader of the demigods because all the demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, exist under his protection. The great saintly persons, sages, and Vaishnavas also depend on him. To persecute the Vaishnavas, therefore, is the only way to kill Vishnu. Om Gyanatam Randasya Ganagana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurev Namaha. Offer my humble obeisances to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who has opened my eyes, blinded by the darkness of ignorance, with the torchlight of knowledge. In the beginning of this preface of the 10th canto, Srila Prabhupada says, the 10th canto is distinct from the first 9 cantos because it deals directly with the transcendental activities of the personality of Sri Krishna. One will be unable to capture the effects of the 10th canto without going through the first 9 cantos. The book is complete in 12 cantos, each independent, but it's good for all to read them in small installments, one after another. And yet, Srila Prabhupada, the first thing practically that he gave us other than the teachings of Lord Chaitanya was the Krishna book. However, the way Srila Prabhupada wrote that Krishna book is he incorporated the first cantos 1 to 9 because he purported it as he wrote it. It was a really unique presentation of the 10th canto. And so many devotees came to Krishna, so many people came to Krishna consciousness just by reading that exposition of the 10th canto. Prabhupada has often said that my purports are more important than my translations. In other words, he really explains things to us. And here he's explaining, it's kind of a mixed message if you see it on a mundane way, because Prabhupada's saying here that that Lord Vishnu is protecting great saintly persons, sages, and Vaishnavas. But then in the purport, he said, no, you have to become a Vaishnava in order to ultimately become a liberated soul, to become liberated from material conditioned life. So it's kind of the way in which Prabhupada writes sometimes, you have to kind of go a little bit deeper. And one of the things that I looked at in the context of Prabhupada speaking about demons, the relationship of our movement and how we preach, is that he became actually even more dogmatic as time went on. He presented the philosophy very softly in many ways in the beginning, but then as Prabhupada preached throughout the years, his preaching became, in a sense, more emphatic. And I've been reading some entries lately that have been coming into my mailbox, and they have been stressing that aspect of Srila Prabhupada's preaching about how to deal with the demonic nature, how to deal with demonic people. And so I did a printout I thought appropriate to this verse because it gives a little sense of what the mood developed to be within the time that Prabhupada was with us. There's a lot of discussion, have we become too soft or too, have we made our message in a sense, or we're not willing to make our message as strong as it was when Prabhupada was present. So I thought, okay, it's always a balancing act when you're delivering the message that Prabhupada has given us. And given, not just given, but he's given it to us for us to actually care for. It's not just a message that, okay, now just repeat these words, because Prabhupada was anxious that we speak from our own realization. But it's a message that we have to deliver very carefully, it's fragile. You know, one word can sometimes, in a sense, distract the conditioned soul from the essential message of Krishna consciousness. But on the other hand, if one just repeats the words of the spiritual master, one is actually performing one's duty perfectly, just delivering the message as it is. So we're always kind of caught, especially with family. You know, my mother, she's a meat eater, but I love her. She's a wonderful person. She has many wonderful qualities. Nrsimhananda Maharaj had made the distinction about when we talk about the example of the one in front of all the zeros, you know, it's all zero without one. It's all zero without bhakti, without devotional service, sadhana bhakti. It's all zero without Krishna. Everyone knows that analogy. And Nrsimhananda Maharaj, he says, yes, but, you know, let's say you have 2 zeros and you put the one in front of it, it's 100. Or you have, you know, 9 zeros and you put the one in front of it, then it becomes 1,000,000. Is that right? 1,000,000? 1,000,000,000, thank you. So actually the number of zeros has some value. So a lot of times if we're preaching, you know, we may be preaching to people who are, you know, very intelligent people. They have a lot of material qualities. They're scientists, they're philosophers, or they're professors, or this. They have a lot of zeros. And in order to help them put that one in front of all those zeros takes sometimes some care. But at the same time, we don't want to dilute the message. So I'm going to read a few things that Prabhupada said about our preaching and how, in a sense, it has to be very uncompromising because we are representing the position of protecting the message, protecting the Vaishnava message. And therefore we have we're agents of Vishnu. And it's very important that we deliver that message very clearly. For example, in the early days, Prabhupada was pleased to hear that Alan Watts, an aesthetic author popular in the 60s and 70s, became angry when asked to read and review Prabhupada's original Bhagavad Gita manuscript. Prabhupada said, our preaching is proved successful when the demons are disturbed. And I remember we had very heavy preaching in that during the time of the case of, what's your name, the Robin George case. And the anti-cult movement was very strong in those times. And, you know, we got a visceral reaction from various groups, like we did, like we always do in our Rath Yatra. We have these Christians, you know, they're standing there every year. You have to hand it to them. They have that one quality of determination, you know. They're there every year. God bless them. And of course, we're delivering the message to them very nicely. We're just chanting in their face and moving on. So, Prabhupada also said, if you become Krishna conscious, the whole world will become your enemy. You must be prepared for that. And in a way, sometimes when I'm preaching, and I'm kind of perplexed as how to present things to a particular type of audience, whether it's a single person or someone else, I just decide to, you know what, just let it fly. I'm just going to repeat what Prabhupada said, you know, and in a way, when Prabhupada said to us, he says, you know, I'm an old man, I can say like this, you cannot. Remember, Prabhupada said like that. But now I realize, God, I'm an old, you know, I'm almost as old as Prabhupada. You know, it's like, oh, can I say these things? And because I don't come from that confidence, that body of knowledge, that realization, it's still hard for me to just repeat what Prabhupada said and let it just lay there with someone, you know. But the way in which I've learned how to couch it is, well, I've learned from my esteemed spiritual master this. You know, I don't pretend to completely understand it, but this is what I've learned. And then I lay it on, whatever the occasion is about our philosophy. And it seems to soften the blow. Srila Prabhupada said, nonetheless, we have no business creating enemies, but the process is such that non-devotees will always be inimical towards us. Devotees engaged in preaching should be prepared to be accused by ignorant persons. So this is our mental, you know how athletes prepare and debaters prepare. Everyone prepares. You have to prepare mentally. So that's a meditation. We always have to prepare not to care, not to be what we call in pop psychology codependent upon what other people think. It's a really simple thing. And it's very difficult for some reason because mainly what people are about in the world is about looking good. Whether it's the car they drive or the way they look. It's about looking good. It's about caring what other people think. And here Prabhupada, says we don't care what other people think. But it's kind of, it's also, it's a balance because, you don't want people to become inimical because the way in which you present things. So it's always challenging. It's always, preaching is a dynamic experience. The book distributors know it better than anybody because they're approaching new people, moment to moment. As we have seen, Srila Prabhupada did not always extend unnecessary politeness to rascals. He didn't always consider public opinion to be the criterion for his actions. This is when Prabhupada had completely dissed on a hippie in Delhi. Of course, this was an isolated occurrence, not to be taken as a general model, but we should not take this, to pick fights with people. But at the same time, strong preaching has to be done without a false ego and due consideration of time. So let me give you some other examples. Prabhupada said, regarding your tendency, I won't say to whom, regarding your tendency to become angry in public, that's all right, provided there's positive reaction. Otherwise, we do not wish to create any unnecessary enemies, and you should curb your anger by your advanced intelligence in Krishna consciousness. We have to better correct the faulty habits of the conditioned souls by persuasive, authoritative preaching and personal example without stopping. So that's not always easy, especially when we are especially in the early years, we learned that, because Krishna, you love Krishna. If somebody insults your lover, they say they don't exist, they don't have a face, they don't have arms. How can they say that? What if it was your girlfriend or your husband and they say, oh, he doesn't have a face, and you'd be angry. So, for a while, kind of that was the mood. You get angry at somebody if they were to have insulted your beloved. But Prabhupada's giving us some hints about how we have to be careful in that regard. Referring to a godbrother of his, of Prabhupada's, who was telling our devotees not to say controversial things in public, Srila Prabhupada dismissed him in strong terms as a self-interested person who is simply after some following. That's from Harisari's memories. And it's a balance. Prabhupada says, no one should resent, Chandrika Pandit says, he who speaks out plainly cannot be a deceiver. So when we speak plainly, when we just deliver the message, we're coming from an authentic platform, and people love authenticity. They want us not to be somebody else. They want us to be ourselves, speaking from our own platform of realization. It's a very important aspect. It's why Trump has got so many followers, because even he may speak from ignorance, he's speaking from his platform of realization. He's not speaking as a politician. So people like that. And they like that from devotees also. Prabhupada said, we say plainly, you are all rascals, that's all. You have no discrimination. Anyone who does not believe as it is, he's a rascal. That's all. We may be happy or sorry, you don't mind. You don't make compromise. So again, you have this thunderbolt aspect of Srila Prabhupada. And how we present that, we can present that from our realization and also by quoting Srila Prabhupada. To preach straight for, Prabhupada said, these rascals will not understand Krishna. Just like the owl. The owl will never open his eyes to see there is sunlight. However, you may say, Mr. Owl, please open your eyes and see the sun. No, there's no sun. I don't see this owl civilization. So you have to fight with these owls. You must be very strong, especially the sannyasis. We have to fight with owls. We have to open their eyes by force. This Krishna conscious movement is a fight against all owls. So, you get this mood that Srila Prabhupada, at times, he really represents that person who sees the demonic culture and he just wants to slam it. And at the other times, he's more mellow. If I criticize them, they become angry. So what can I do? I have to speak the truth. I cannot amalgamate real and non-real. That's not possible. The Prabhupada said, I can't compromise what I say. And we see in a lot of the videos and certainly many of the tapes, Prabhupada in Chicago when he was talking, he would say very controversial things to the press because that was his realization. In Spiritual Master, everything is spoken frankly without compromise. In spiritual matters, everything is spoken frankly without compromise. We say, if you're not Krishna conscious, you're a rascal. You may be the president, that doesn't matter. But because you're not Krishna conscious, you are a rascal. By the way, I think to myself often, what would I say, given that moment, if I were to be introduced to the President of the United States or some great world leader? What would I say to them? I have maybe 30 seconds. And I think if everyone thinks about that for themselves, what would you say in 30 seconds to somebody who holds great power in the world? That you'll come to a realization of where you're kind of at with preaching Krishna consciousness. It's a barometer of what we would say, because we only have that brief moment to deliver the most essential message. So Prabhupada says here, would he say, because you're Krishna conscious, you're a rascal? Probably not. There's no compromise. Oh, he's a big man. So many scientists come. I say, you're a rascal. You're a demon. I say it, Prabhupada says. So a lot of the way in which you say things, of course, the way you deliver the message has an impact in how it's received. So if you say it with a smile, you're a rascal, because you don't accept that you're not this body. You don't accept that God is the supreme controller, and actually you don't abide by his instructions. Well, you're a rascal, but you can do better. You can make the world better. Whatever it is that you think about, meditate on how would you preach to one of the biggest demons in the planet if you had 30 seconds to do it. And you may find that in refining that thought, of how we deliver the message of Krishna consciousness, it may affect how you're able to give it to others. We cannot compromise to satisfy others, Prabhupada says. We don't make any compromise. What we believe, we are preaching that. People are accepting, and we did. When Prabhupada was present, so many people just accepted on the basis of very strong preaching, because during the time of Prabhupada's presence and sometime after, we just stuck to the message. It wasn't compromised at all. We just delivered it. And we'd tell people, come, become liberated, go back home, come back to Godhead, join the temple. We were very strong in our preaching. Now we have all kinds of shades of gray of preaching. But at that time, it was very black and white, I would say. And we had good results with that. So there's a place for the black and white preaching. I'm not saying that it's not a place for the many shades of gray also. But in reviewing a lot of these quotes of Prabhupada, I kind of began to revive that mood. That, kind of just see if I can deliver that message a little more with a smile or with a warm handshake or whatever, but at the same time, this is what we believe. This is our truth. We are facing so many difficulties. We don't care for it. We never compromise. All my students, they will never compromise. Why should I compromise? If I'm confident that I'm speaking the truth, why shall I compromise? Those who are not confident of his position, they will compromise. One who does not know where he stands, he will compromise. And if I know where I'm standing, why shall I compromise? Let others do whatever they like. This is our position. When you become actually preacher of Krishna consciousness, you cannot make any compromise. You must call a spade a spade. And Prabhupada's books, in this lecture, he does that constantly. And even when he's preaching to the non-devotee class of people, he was very strong. He wouldn't even go, with various people, wouldn't go beyond that. You're eating meat, you're killing animals. Why are you doing that? It says in the Bible not to do that. Why? So thou shalt not kill. Why are you killing? Prabhupada was he stuck to the simple elements of how to help people elevate themselves in spiritual life. The fact is that I am the only one in India who's openly criticizing not only demigod worship and impersonalism, but everything that falls short of complete surrender to Krishna. My Guru Maharaj never compromised in his preaching, nor will I. Nor should any of my students. We are firmly convinced that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead and all others are his part and parcel servants. This we must declare boldly to the world. Doesn't get much clearer than that. Huh? You ready to respond? I'm not saying Prabhupada's saying. When you actually become a preacher of Krishna, of God consciousness, you cannot make any oh, I'm sorry, read that one. So, once in Hawaii, a bogus group was glorifying a supposed incarnation of Rama and Krishna. Govinda Dasi stood up on a table and started saying, "How can you say this ugly man is God?" A girl complained, "You're not emanating love." Govinda Dasi shot back, "This ugly old man is killing you and you want to emanate love?" This was reported to Srila Prabhupada, who was very pleased and ordered the incident to be reported in the Back to Godhead magazine under the title, Heroine Govinda Dasi. That's a story told by Umapati Swami. So many quotes here. I'll read them all. Once a professor came to meet Prabhupada, and Prabhupada inquired, "What do you teach?" "Hinduism," the man said. "What do you mean by Hinduism?" The professor, thinking to give a clever reply, said, "I don't know." And Prabhupada retorted. Prabhupada said, "Then you are a cheater, for you are purporting to teach that which you do not know." The professor became livid with anger. A shouting match began, and the professor had to be removed. Now, do we imitate that? No, I would not recommend it. But it's a mood that we have to understand that Srila Prabhupada, who has many different moods, also has that mood. And it's one, I think, that many of the disciples, of Prabhupada's disciples, imbued during his presence. There was a certain uncompromisingness about our preaching, that we were facing a world that was divided between the demons, which was everybody else except us, and us, who are endeavoring on the path of the Vaishnavas, very much like is described in this chapter. Now, that's a very difficult world to live in, where you see everybody else as demonized, including your family and so on and so forth. So, we obviously learned that there are various degrees of demonic behavior, and people, part of them is demonic in their actions, but deep down, everybody, his spirit soul, deserves the opportunity to become Krishna conscious. And we mellowed our preaching in such a way over the years to accommodate that understanding, and that we aren't Prabhupada, that we can't deliver the message as he can, because he was very much directed by Krishna because as a pure devotee, every action, every word, every deed, we understand a pure devotee is actually there by the grace of Krishna. Which brings me to a point that really this purport brought me to understand, is that we're only here for one reason, because we're all demons. We're demons in the sense, and we all still have demonic qualities. We're not pure devotees as far as I know. At least I know I'm not. We're acting on the platform in doing our devotional service as pure devotional service, but we're not acting in thinking in every moment, how can I please Krishna? How can I please Krishna? How can I please, even more important, how can I please my spiritual master? Which is the secret to pleasing Krishna. So we're kind of in this place where we have to accept that even within our own self and with our own community, there are going to be displays of demonic qualities. And we have to be patient with ourselves, with our own community, as we grow and develop and be purified. But it's only by one condition, and that is by the mercy of Krishna. We're only here by Krishna's mercy. So many people have read Prabhupada's books, they've chanted Hare Krishna, they've come to our festivals, but they don't practice sadhana bhakti. Why is that? Many of them have terrific qualities. They're wonderful people. Why are they not here with us? Because they don't have one thing that we were fortunate to get, and that is the mercy of Guru and Gauranga. We're only here by the grace of God. And that's ultimately how everybody is situated. They're depending on Krishna's mercy. And our job is to deliver that mercy, but it's Krishna who also has to act within each of those souls to inspire them to take this process seriously. So in that sense, we have a humble position in our preaching, because we're not the controller of whether people take to Krishna consciousness. We're not even the controller of whether we take to Krishna consciousness. We're just the recipients of this inconceivable, this achintya, this inconceivable mercy. And when we approach people, it's really important for us to remember that we were once in their position. No matter how bad they are, no matter how bad Kamsa is, he's still spirit soul. And he has a lot of great qualities. He's so much of him was Brahminical. He understood so much in order to be able to ask forgiveness from Vasudeva Devaki. And he was supplicating himself, understanding the role of destiny, of providence in his life. And at the same time, we have to see that in everybody's life. So that, as Prabhupada says here, he says, our so-called religion is unique in the world, simply because we stand solidly on philosophy, and because we're strong in that way, no one can refute or defeat us. So we are wiping out sentimental religion wherever we penetrate it. And it appears that people everywhere are accepting us more and more. That was from a letter that he wrote in 1972. He was very excited, very pleased, I should say, not excited, but pleased by the progress of the preaching that was taking place. In war, there's a time for fighting and a time for making peace, but it's mostly fighting. The battlefield is no place for pacifists or cowards. Those who do not fight have already lost. And without attacking, no one can win. And Ummapati Swami says, in the earliest days of Krishna consciousness, a group of budding devotees complained to Prabhupada that he was too hostile against impersonalism, false yogis, and so on. And Prabhupada replied, a preacher must attack. So how we attack? Book distribution, prasadam distribution, harinam. In our preaching, we just deliver the message. Prabhupada wrote in 71, I'm very glad you are challenging all of these so-called swamis and gurus. My Guru Maharaj appreciated devotees who boldly present our Vaishnava philosophy. We must take advantage of every opportunity to defeat these rascals and drive them away. So please continue the strong attitude. You can eulogize your Guru Maharaj, but you have to learn how to face the public and be strong to defend yourself. That is success. Not simply by praising your Guru Maharaj. You'll praise your Guru Maharaj. That is not very difficult. But be victorious over the opposing elements. Then you will praise your Guru Maharaj nicely. At home you can praise your Guru Maharaj, and Guru Maharaj will be satisfied. Oh, my disciples are praising me. That is good. Respectful. That is qualification. But you have to fight. Then your Guru Maharaj will be glorified. So, in reading some of these quotes and in relating it to this purport about the demigods and the Vaishnavas, another interesting thing in this purport and in the verse is that the Vaishnavas are distinguished from the great saintly persons and the sages. And in the end of the purport, Prabhupada says that you have to become a Vaishnava. He doesn't say you have to become a saintly person and a sage. Actually, you have to become a Vaishnava in order to become liberated from conditioned life. And it's a distinction that is made consistently if you look through Prabhupada's books and lectures. Is that how else can you learn to love God if you don't give God a face, or you don't understand God's face and His personality? It's just, it's the example of trying to love a girlfriend or a boyfriend and they don't have a body and they don't have, they don't know anything about them, what they like, they don't like. So ultimately, we do preach, we do share with people the idea that to love God, you have to learn how to know God. And to learn how to know God, it's revealed in our, most beautifully, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10th Canto. All these wonderful pastimes of Krishna. So, in your preaching, you always keep that mood that I'm representing these very strong desires of my Guru Maharaj to present the truth as it is, without any compromise. At the same time, we're constantly faced with having to adjust according to the time, the place, the circumstance. And it's a constant balance, and it helps us actually in our Krishna consciousness, because we have to become completely dependent on the Lord for inspiration. Dear Lord, I don't know how I'm going to speak in front of these people. Please give me the words. Give me some, just like coming to a lecture today. Oh, I have to give a lecture. Please, Krishna, I prayed. Give me some inspiration how to share my understanding of Krishna consciousness with my family of Vaishnavas. And in that way, hopefully, we'll tap into the mercy of the Lord and our Guru, and we'll be able to pass it on to others in ways that they also can imbibe it and understand it and accept it. So now, there's some question.
I don't know. Yeah, you made a lot of points there, and I guess I agree with your conclusion. Let me see if I understood what you were saying. So Prabhupada definitely preached very boldly and without compromise. And you read statements to the effect that he wanted his disciples to preach like that as well. And also there was that one example you gave of Govinda Dasi, who on one occasion she did that and it was reported to Prabhupada and he was pleased. Okay? But at the same time, you yourself said at the beginning of the class, you find it difficult to, directly in the first person say to somebody, you're a rascal. You say, well, my esteemed spiritual master analyzes this situation like this. He has this to say about that, which is, as you said, a softer way of presenting the same information. Perhaps not as potent. Perhaps, I don't know if Prabhupada would want us to do it like that, because there's that other reference where Prabhupada said, yes, you will eulogize your spiritual master, but when you're, confronting these people, you got to preach strongly. And I got the impression from that reference that he was saying, no, don't just glorify me and say, my spiritual master was a pure devotee, said this. What do you say? And I was like, it's kind of like it's on you to be the forceful personality right there. Like Prabhupada was the forceful personality. You can't hide behind Prabhupada's doting and go, well, Prabhupada said this about that. Me, I don't know. I'm just. So it's kind of like, as you said, throughout your entire class, it's hard. It's hard to figure out. The conclusion was nice because you said you really got to pray to Krishna to give you the intelligence how to do it, how to present things forcefully, boldly, without compromise, and at the same time, not turn them off, because that's easy to do too, And then probably if you did further research, you'd probably be able to find statements from Prabhupada to the effect that, well, we have to be careful not to be sanctimonious. We have to be careful not to be hypocrites. That's a fault too. And it's like, there's probably been, how many sannyasis have there been, or leaders within ISKCON, who have come forward and preached in a very heavy-handed, let's say presented in a positive way, very bold, uncompromising way, the philosophy, and then, 6 months later, a year later, they're gone. So, then maybe the Indian people, for instance, let's use that as an example. Some Western sannyasis sitting down in front of an audience of some receptive Indian people and really giving them the sauce, as we say, and they're going, okay, yeah. And then 1 year later, he's gone, and they're all going, just see, they're not going to take us seriously. So what I'm getting at is, you're right, it's really tricky to figure out. Like you asked that question about if I had 30 seconds to say something to the president, what would I say? It sounds like you would say something like, well, as far as on this subject, my spiritual master had to say this about that. I might say something like, and I'm just asking, I'm not saying it's the correct thing, you can give me feedback. I might say something like, well, actually, we're something more than just this material body. We're essentially spiritual beings. There's a lot of empiric evidence that supports that. It's not that you just have to take it on the strength of some, scripture, for instance. There's evidence that supports that. It might be a good idea for you if you want, I could direct you towards that. And it might be a good idea for you to kind of just check it out and study it, because it could change the whole way you think about life, and your understanding of life and the way you live, and even the way you lead. You see, now that's not directly saying to the person, you're a rascal, you're in the bodily concept of life, you're not this body. So anyway, I appreciate the point you're making. You're talking about mixed message. The whole class, I was just going like, well, what side of the fence is he on? Is he on the side of the fence where he's advocating this strong type of preaching? Or is he on the side of the fence where he's going, well, that's good. We don't want to compromise, but at the same time, we've got to be, it's like one of those fans that goes one way and then you press the thing and it starts going the other way and you press it and it goes the other. But I liked it on the whole, but it's, I hope I'm being coherent here and you're following the point I'm making. It's kind of difficult to, get a conclusive message of what is it you're telling us to do. But anyway, well, you did it in the end. You just said pray to Krishna and to get the intelligence how to be able to do both things at the same time. Be very bold and uncompromising, and at the same time, be tactful, be diplomatic, present things in such a way that the person doesn't get offended and turned off and, feel that who is this guy anyway, like that. So anyway, thank you. That's my comment. It's not a question if you can respond to that, but if you think.
Thank you very much, Bhagavati Prabhu. First of all, thank you for inviting me to speak, and pardon me for any ambivalence you might have felt, but yes, it is an ambivalent world that we live in that sense that we don't know. We stand on the precipice constantly when we're preaching, and we're having to reach for, Krishna to help us. And it's very true. I have found, from personal experience, when in doubt, I will tilt to the essential message. I will tilt on the side of being a little bold. Because I found that, a dish without a spice is not very palatable, really. And we live in a very bland world. And people are, how you doing? Fine, I'm doing good, fine, great. Everyone's, very superficial. And when you offer somebody something that has some substance to it, some spice to it, some flavor they haven't had before, they taste it. They're willing to actually, listen to it for a moment, because something they haven't heard before. And the other aspect of that is that there are tons of groups of yogis and transcendentalists and so on who are teaching we're not the body. That's not ours. From my perspective, that's not our essential message. So everybody else, the Christians teach they're not this gross body. Every religion teaches spiritual. Oh yeah, we're not the body. But that God is a person, God is a real person you can shake hands with, that nobody's teaching. I mean, I remember one devotee telling me he was going to commit suicide in Mumbai. He was an IIT guy in Mumbai, and so he went one last night to the library just to read for enjoyment, because the next day he was going to commit suicide. And sometimes these ontological issues of my own existence, why am I here, it's useless, they overwhelm us, and we just want to check out. And he pulled out, because of there was a LA printed version of the Bhagavatam at that time in the library, and it had all the pictures of the Vaikuntha planets. It looked very fanciful. So he pulled that out because it looked like fun, like comic books, And he said the first thing he read there was that God is a person. He said, I never read that anywhere else. In all of my teaching, all of my searching, I never read that God is a person. He said, I read that whole book. He said, I didn't know there was a temple. That time was in the 90s. He didn't know there was a temple on the other side of Mumbai. And for I'm sorry, it wasn't the 90s, it was in the 70s, 1976. And he said that he only found out a year later, after he had developed a group of his fellow students who would chant the mantra, Maha Mantra, that the newspaper, there was a picture of Srila Prabhupada because he had passed away. And there was a observance at the Juhu temple. He only found out there was a Juhu temple, and he went all the way across town to get to that temple and ended up staying there. What I'm saying is that we only have a short time with people. So to give them something that somebody else can give them from another group doesn't seem to me to be time effective.
What about giving something that else they're going to give them? You yourself haven't realized. You've heard it, you've understood it, you've intellectually understanding it. I suppose to a certain extent, you realize that you're trying to act upon that knowledge, determination, devotion, etc. like that. But you don't have to be saying in such a way that is obviously beyond your own realization. Something that will feel like acceptable, topical, how about it? not more than acceptable. That's something that Prabhupada would think about. But I'm saying this, I say to President Obama, Krishna, God is a person, his name is Krishna. I'm doing it, I'm living my life with it. And somebody's trying to come to that level of revelation, but I say I'm far from it. So would that be what Prabhupada would want me to say? In the 30 seconds I have.
I don't know, because I'm not in your heart with the super soul for those 30 seconds, because, I'm hoping that those 30 seconds will be inspired to give that person what they need at that time. So I'm not there. And I certainly have, been surprised by what I say sometimes when I'm with certain VIPs or people, given certain aspects. Yes.
Thank you for the class, Nrsimhananda Prabhu. The one quality that Srila Prabhupada had that gave him the ability to be so strong is that he had true compassion for the living entity. It wasn't a bodily concept in any way. He really understood who we were and where we were coming from. And in that way, people sense that about a person, about it, that they have the sincere qualities. That gave him his potency.
Although we did read that, people became angry also.
Yes, some people did, but mostly I've listened to a lot of lectures when Prabhupada has said something very strong. And I'm amazed at how people didn't get angry. Bhavani, you have a comment?
Hare Krishna. I have a really good Sankirtan story in that regard. It was St. Louis, and we were all getting ready to leave the airport, and Mrigendra was picking us up. He brought the car around to the curb, and there was a limousine just ahead of us. And I was the next one to get into the Sankirtan car, and he just, he reached from the front seat to the back seat, Mrigendra did, and he said, "Here, give him a book." And he handed me a little bright blue Sri Upanishad hardback. And so I said, "Who is he?" And he said, "It's Brzezinski, Professor Brzezinski." At that time, he was the Secretary of National Security.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I quickly grabbed the little Sri Upanishad and ran to the car in front of us. And I thought, what should I say to him? And just immediately, as he was getting in the car, he just sat down. I handed him the book and I said, "This book gives you the formula for world peace." So you're saying what to say to a very important person when you only have a split second to do that. And he took the book and he said, "Thank you." Got in his car and they closed the door. So about 20 years later, Mrigendra and I were watching, which he never does, somehow or other. Oh, we were watching Brzezinski on, we were watching Professor Brzezinski giving an interview. And about 20 minutes into the interview, in fact, the interview was about 20 minutes long. Almost the whole, when he finished, I looked at Mrigendra, he looked at me, and I said, "Did you hear that?" He goes, "Yes." And practically the entire interview was from the Sri Upanishad and the formula for world peace. He didn't mention Krishna, but he mentioned the philosophy. So I thought that was...
You were speaking about how Srila Prabhupada didn't care for social norms and, niceties of conversation. It brought two instances of Srila Prabhupada to mind for me. One was in France when he was received by all the dignitaries, and Srila Prabhupada was sitting down, and when the dignitaries entered the room and he was about to speak, everyone stood, and Srila Prabhupada didn't stand.
And it was very uncomfortable because the speaker wasn't going to start, like when a judge enters a room, everyone stands. And when the speaker entered, he wasn't going to start to speak until everyone was standing, and so they were waiting for Srila Prabhupada to stand. And devotee says to Srila Prabhupada, and it became awkward because Prabhupada was not standing. And so the devotee says, Srila Prabhupada, they're waiting for you to stand. And Prabhupada said, who am I standing for? And he never stood. He never stood, and they continued with the... Another time, a minister of education came to visit Srila Prabhupada in India. And he was introduced, and he came in and he sat down in front of Srila Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada didn't say a word to him. He just continued on with what he was doing at his desk. And the devotee thought that maybe Prabhupada hadn't heard the introduction. It was awkward because there was a guest and Prabhupada didn't acknowledge him or speak to him or anything. And so the devotee introduced him again and said, this is so-and-so, the Minister of Education. And Prabhupada looked at him with the thunderbolts in his eyes and he said, that is not education. And then he began to preach about what real education is. Thank you for your class. Thank you very much.
Satchidanand.
So what I got from this, Prabhu, is that it appears that there's no black and white in spreading Krishna consciousness, especially when the pure devotee, he knows how to act perfectly for that particular situation. One of the things that I was a little bit bewildered and questioning about how Prabhupada acted at one particular time, because in my conception I thought, wow, this is such a great opportunity. Yogi Bhajan was trying to convince him to come to a big conference where many people will come, and this will be such a great thing for you to come, and we would love to have you there. And I was thinking, yeah, why not? Nowadays we do that. I mean, in fact, Anuttama, that's what he's doing all the time. So, but he chose not to go because what is the use? Krishna is not in the picture.
I think it was that they don't accept Bhagavad Gita.
They don't accept Bhagavad Gita. Yeah,
therefore, what is the use?
He said, what is the use? But nowadays it's like we feed ourselves of meeting other people. Otherwise, you're too sectarian. You're too close-minded. But when it comes to Prabhupada, he did so many things in different ways that we don't understand sometimes. So you have to have the purity. Yeah.
He said indirectly, I refused him. If I went, it would mean that I was endorsing him.
Yeah.
I think one important point is that understands that Prabhupada was being inspired by Super Soul from minute to minute. I would never dare to say that to the Minister of Education from India. I mean, because you said, what if you at your present state had, like the opportunity to talk to about, okay, so I would say something like, oh, thank you very much for coming, we appreciate your, something like that. Prabhupada, how could you say something like that to the Minister of Education, Super Soul? Prabhupada felt, he's inspired by the Super Soul, boom. And he just says it, and it's perfectly, obviously, exactly the right thing to say. But if you're not being inspired, right, if you're not on that platform, if you're not on that level, it could be a dangerous thing to do. Like they say, don't try this at home, That could be a dangerous thing to do if you're not actually, for really being inspired by the Super Soul, you could really mess things up and, get in a lot of trouble. Cause the movement in a lot of trouble.
That's why they call spiritual life a razor's edge, because it's like that. I'm suggesting, based on my own experience and seeing how our preaching has gone, that we err on the side of being bold. That's what I'm suggesting. We err on that side because it's a one-shot chance, for a lot of people when we meet them. And that is going to strike like it struck us. It's going to strike. We just have to be willing to do it and deliver it, like a mailman, without attachment.
I think that's the correct conclusion, and you supported that by what you read. Because that's what Prabhupada wanted his disciples to do. He said, I preach boldly, and I want my disciples to do the same thing. And there was that example of Govindadasi. So that's what Prabhupada wanted us to do. So even you feel like, well, how can I say something like that? Prabhupada wanted me to say it. Prabhupada wants us to say it like that, so boom, you just deliver it. And
I guess what I'm saying is, when in doubt, tilt bold. Tilt towards just repeat what Prabhupada said, and you can say it. You can temper it by saying, I don't pretend to understand this completely, but this is what my guru has taught me. And then you give them the straight sauce, and then you deflect it. They don't kill the messenger. And they also understand. Most people understand that individuals have realizations based on life experience that is going to vary from place to place. I mean, let's face it. This world that we're in now, the way we hear it, chainsawing people in half, killing them, all the different things that are going on, and ISIS and this and that, and it's a fairly extreme situation we're in. I mean, just look at the candidates for the president of the most powerful country on the planet, and we're in big trouble. We've got a lot of demons who are shaping things, and they're not anywhere near the quality of Kamsa. Kamsa had realization. Well, he was certainly it's hard because Kamsa was also, it was a pastime, pastime of Krishna, so that all gets into the mix. So it's hard sometimes to compare Kamsa to some demon today. But I guess I'll end the class by saying that first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to give the class. I appreciate the opportunity to share. It is a big issue in our society, how compromising we become with our preaching. And it looked to me like we have our greatest success in terms of, at least with Westerners, I can't say with Indians so much, but with Westerners, of attracting them when our preaching is the boldest. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.